අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Thursday, the 27th of April 2023. Blacklist. The United States bans Sri Lanka's wartime Navy commander Wasantha Karannagoda from entering the US. Sri Lanka expresses grave concern over the United States' unilateral action. Mind your business. Russian envoy in Colombo criticizes the US and Western countries over alleged interferences into sovereign states.
Nobody has a right to lecture you what to do, what not to do. This is your domestic issue.
Sustainable growth. Sri Lanka will achieve a milestone in economic growth when public debt restored, says central bank, as 2022 annual report shows 9 trillion rupee increase in foreign and local debt. Heat shock. Another death reported in Epavela after exposure to extreme heat. Cooperation. The US and South Korea to jointly counter the North Korean nuclear threat, but Washington says South Korea cannot develop its own nuclear weapons.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවේ රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Ndivadi Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. We take you tonight to your top story. The US Department of State banned the entry of former Navy commander and governor of the Northwestern Province, Admiral of the Fleet Wasantha Karannagoda and his spouse over alleged violation of human rights during Karannagoda's tenure as commander of Sri Lanka Navy. The US said they have reaffirmed their commitment to upholding human rights, ending impunity for human rights violators and promoting accountability for perpetrators in Sri Lanka by barring entry of Wasantha Karannagoda. However, Sri Lanka expressed regret over the decision, highlighting that such unilateral action by the United States without following due process is counterproductive to the holistic approach that Sri Lanka has taken on addressing national unity and reconciliation.
Releasing a media communique, the US Department of State said they will be designating former Sri Lankan naval commander and current governor of Northwestern Province, Admiral of the Fleet Wasantha Karannagoda, alleging that he had been involved in a gross violation of human rights during his tenure as a naval commander. The designation is made by the US Department of State under provisions of the Department of State, Foreign Operations and Related Appropriations Act 2023. As a result of today's action, the US Department of State says Karannagoda and his wife Srimati Ashoka Karannagoda are ineligible for entry into the United States. The State Department further said the allegation that Wasantha Karannagoda committed a gross human rights violation documented by NGOs and independent investigations is serious and credible. By designating Wasantha Karannagoda, the State's Department says they reaffirm their commitment to upholding human rights, ending impunity for human rights violators, acknowledging the suffering of victims and survivors, and promoting accountability for perpetrators in Sri Lanka. The US State Department also said they are committed to working with the Sri Lankan government on advancing justice, accountability and reconciliation, including promoting security reform that maintains human rights at the forefront while ensuring Sri Lanka has the resources and training to properly address emerging security concerns. However, Sri Lanka expressed objection over the action of the US State Department. The Sri Lankan Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement that Foreign Minister Ali Sabri had expressed today to the US Ambassador in Colombo Julie Chung Sri Lanka's grave concern associated with this decision. The Foreign Minister said, as a long-standing bilateral partner of Sri Lanka, such unilateral action by the US without following due process is counterproductive to the holistic approach that Sri Lanka had taken on addressing national unity and reconciliation. The ministry added that it is also unfortunate that the announcement emanates against the backdrop of tangible progress made by the government in strengthening the country's democratic governance and reconciliation structures. The Foreign Ministry noted that despite these challenges, Sri Lanka will continue its ongoing efforts to achieve reconciliation, economic recovery and social-economic development.
Meanwhile, expressing his objection to the move of the United States to ban the entry of the former Navy commander, Russian ambassador in Colombo, Levan Zhagarian, pointed out that the United States and Western countries have no right to interfere into domestic affairs of any sovereign state. Addressing media at the Russian embassy in Colombo today, the Russian envoy also responded to questions on crude oil trade amid the Ukraine-Russian war.
A few words about relations with the United States. Their main aim is destabilization of the situation in the world. They interfere into domestic affairs of many countries, not only in Russia. Today in the morning, I read this just news that they decided to designate your governor of Northwestern Province, the former commander of Navy, just imposed sanctions against him for so-called violations of human rights. There is one English proverb or English saying, if your house is made of glass, don't throw stones. Let's speak about violations of human rights in Western countries. First of all, they should focus on their domestic issues, or their domestic problems. They have a huge number of problems in the United States, in Europe. Look what's going on in France, in Germany. So such an interference into domestic affairs of sovereign countries, including Sri Lanka, are totally unacceptable. Nobody has a right to lecture you what to do or not to do. This is your domestic issue. And I think that the government of Sri Lanka, your political parties, both opposition, ruling parties, the people, everybody, all political forces, you are wise enough to settle down your problems yourselves.
I just wanted to update on the crude oil trade with Sri Lanka. Will it be disrupted with the war in Ukraine, or will Sri Lanka-Russia trade ties be stable?
As to the crude oil and other issues, it's up to our private companies. It's up to them. We cannot, as a government, we cannot make order to private company to go or not to go for trade. If they have some profits, it's up to them. I don't want to go into details. We just expected the next session of our, let's say, Intergovernmental Economic Commission, as we say, Joint Economic Commission, which is to be held, I think, in May, in the format of online format. From your side, it's the Minister of Trade. From our side, is the Federal Agency of Fishery, which is to be, and we will discuss different issues of our bilateral cooperation between the two countries. On the 3rd of May, I will have a meeting with your Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Mahinda. We will discuss some bilateral issues with him and also with some other officials about some other bilateral projects.
Well, in Parliament today, State Minister of Finance Shahan Semasinghe said the government is unable to change any conditions of the agreement until targets are met before the first review of the International Monetary Fund EFF, which falls in September. In the meantime, Minister of Environment Nazir Ahmed said Sri Lanka should take the maximum use of the IMF agreement to stabilize the economy out of crisis.
බංකොලොත් වෙන්න කලින් ගියා නම් ජාත්‍යන්තර මුල්ල අරමුදල එතකොට අපිට ගනුදෙනු කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ IMF එකයි අපි විතරයි බංකොලොත් වෙන බව දැන ප්‍රමාද කෙරුවා බංකොලොත් උනහම අර නායකාරයෝ ඔක්කොම මේකට
මේ දුන්න 2.9 බිලියන් ඩොලර්ස් ලැබීම තුලින් දැන් අපිට LC එකක් ඕපන් කරන්න පුළුවන් බැංකුවල ඕනම කෙනෙකුට
දැන් අපේ සභානායකතුමා කිව්වා මේ නායක ගත්තාම බැංකුවෙන් කියනවා සමාගම් බංකොලොත් නම් අලුත් අධ්‍යක්ෂක මණ්ඩලයක් පත් කරගන්න ඉතින් ආණ්ඩුව ඉල්ලාස් වෙන්න බංකොලොත් කරපුවාට ණය දෙන්නේ
අපි පළවෙනි රිවිව් එකට යද්දී සැප්තැම්බර් නැත්නම් ඔක්තෝබර් මාසෙ වෙද්දී අපි මේ ඉලක්ක සපුරා ගැනීම ඉතාම අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. නමුත් එතකන් අපිට කිසිදු ආකාරයක වෙනස්කමක් මේ ඇති කරගෙන තියෙන එකගතාවලට සිදු කරන්න බෑ ගරු නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායකතුමනි.
Due to the improved investor confidence and tourist perception created by the IMF fund facility, there has been an improvement in the country's external finances in the first 2 months of this year. Therefore, the significance of the IMF EFF should be looked at in the larger context of this ripple effect that it could potentially create in bringing back the Sri Lankan economy on course. Now that Sri Lanka has won the IMF bailout package, I believe it is only now we are earning the most challenging phase of the country's recovery process. We need to view that this is an opportunity to break with past unsustainable policies and follow a path of economic discipline to stabilize the economy and achieve economic development. If Sri Lanka loses this opportunity, there will not be a chance for the 17th application to the IMF.
Look at the past 75 years of failure in ethnic relations and change that, since that has been the foundation for this country's lack of development and failure. Despite us saying all of that, that is being totally ignored. Everything as far as ethnic relations are concerned is a box-ticking exercise and nothing more. And it is for these reasons that our party has chosen to oppose this.
The central bank reiterated their commitment to restore public debt sustainability through the debt restructuring process, highlighting as a potential milestone in the path towards attaining sustained growth in the economy. In its annual report for year 2022, the central bank called on all stakeholders to extend their support towards the implementation of essential reforms at this juncture to resolve structural hindrances that have rooted in the economy over the last 7.5 decades. The annual report of the Monetary Board of the Central Bank for the year 2022 was presented to President Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Finance Minister by Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe. According to central bank statistics, foreign and local debt that amounted to 18 trillion rupees in year 2021 rose by 9 trillion rupees to 27 trillion rupees in 2022. Government revenue in 2022 stood at 2 trillion rupees due to revenue enhancement measures, which is a 37.5% increase compared to 1.5 trillion recorded in year 2021. Expenditure for 2022, however, stood at 4.5 trillion rupees, which is a 27% increase compared to the 3.5 trillion expenditure recorded in 2021. Income from exports during 2022 stood at $13.1 million, while import expenditure during the same year was $18.3 trillion. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, with a multitude of goals to be achieved under the IMF arrangement, restoring public debt sustainability through the debt restructuring process will be one of the key milestones in the path towards attaining a sustained growth in the economy. However, the Monetary Authority is of the view that debt restructuring could pose near-term challenges in the financial sector that need to be addressed proactively by the government and the central bank, thereby reinforcing financial system stability in the period ahead. Highlighting that policy measures and reforms implemented have yielded notable success so far, the central bank said the external current account deficit remained modest alongside the gradual accumulation of official reserves, thereby enabling the reinstatement of exchange rate flexibility from early March 2023. The central bank noted that the envisaged normalization of foreign exchange flows and the completion of debt restructuring process during 2023 and the sweeping reforms in the public sector are expected to pave way for the country's progress towards improved and sustainable economic prospects. The central bank said the socio-economic crisis reiterated the essentiality of data-driven policy making, devastating implications of ad hoc policy experiments, crippling welfare impacts of myopic populist policies, and the cost of policy delays, disregarding evidence-based policy analysis, well-established economic fundamentals, and expert opinions. The bank noted that the general public and businesses at large had to bear the cost of a one-time adjustment of delayed structural reforms. Against this backdrop, the central bank called on the government, the central bank itself, and all other stakeholders to extend their support towards the implementation of essential reforms at this juncture to resolve structural hindrances that have rooted in the economy over the last 7.5 decades. Central Bank adds that consistent and well-coordinated policies, including those outlined in the IMF-supported program, should be executed in a timely manner to avert another crisis in the period ahead. On to the weather situation. A third death attributed to the current heat wave experienced in Sri Lanka was reported yesterday. The post-mortem examination into the death revealed that the individual had suffered a heat stroke. Temperatures hovered around 39 to 45 degrees Celsius during the daytime.
Most parts of Sri Lanka, including Colombo, have been experiencing heat waves during the past few days, contributing to an excessive hot weather. During the daytime, temperatures in several provinces remained in the range of 39 and 45 degrees Celsius, and as per the heat index at caution level. In this backdrop, several incidents attributed to heat conditions were reported from the Epawal area in the north-central province during the past few days. Yesterday, a person was found dead while working in a paddy field close to his house. The post-mortem examination concluded the cause of death as a heat stroke. Earlier, another 2 deaths were from the same area after severe exposure to heat conditions. The deceased were residents of the Epawal area aged 34 and 38. It is reported that one of the individuals died after he poured ice water on his head immediately after engaging in a New Year festival sports activity. Meanwhile, the other individual died as soon as he took a bath after being exposed to the heat during work at a paddy field. Post-mortem examinations revealed that the individuals had died due to heat shocks in high temperature.
However, in this backdrop, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Center of the Department of Meteorology issued an amber advisory warning of severe lightning to several places across the island. Accordingly, the department said that thunder showers accompanied by severe lightning are likely to occur at several places in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central and northwestern provinces and in the Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Mena, Anuradhapura, Galle and Mathura districts. The department further mentioned that early heavy showers above 75 millimeters are expected in some places as well. The Met Department, meanwhile, urged the public to make adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by lightning activity. Now, the Chief Executive Officer of China Merchant Group says the group will continue to make further investments in South Asia during a visit in the Hambantota port.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි. ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. මේ අලුත් අවුරුද්දේ හිත පිරෙන ගනුදෙනුවකට හොඳම තැන හිත ගිය තැන බැංකුව HNB.
අත්දැකීම් බහුලවෙන්ම තාක්ෂණික දැනුමින් සන්නද්ධ පිරිසකගේ සේවය නිරතුරුව. දශක 6කට වඩා වැඩි අත්දැකීම්. තාක්ෂණික නිලධාරීන් 165 දෙනෙකුගේ සේවය. Lanka Insurance.
The Chief Executive Officer of China Merchant Group says the group will continue to make further investments in the South Asian region. He made these comments during an inspection tour at the Hambantota International Port. The CEO of China Merchant Group said they plan to actively promote cooperation with China's Sinopec and focus on roll-on, roll-off cargo, bulk cargo, oil and gas, development of container handling, industrial park and maritime services. Founder of the initiative, Aramuna entrepreneur Dilip Javera points out that individuals and groups with political aspirations should protect local entrepreneurs as a first step. He made these remarks speaking at a symposium of the Aramuna series yesterday.
Symposium of the initiative Aramuna was held in Kurunagala yesterday under the patronage of its founder, entrepreneur Dilip Javera.
විවිධ රටවල් මේ ගෝලීය අවපාතය පුරෝකථනය කරලා මේට මුහුණ දෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා සූදානම් වුණා. නමුත් අපි රටක් හැටියට මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ අපේ නිවැරදි පුරෝකථනයක් තිබුණු බවවත් ඒ සඳහා සූදානමක් තිබුණු බවවත් අපිට ගොඩක් වෙනස්ව හිතන්න පුළුවන් මේ සියලු ප්‍රශ්න දෙසා IMF එකෙන් තොර IMF එක පමණක්ම පිළිතුර නොවන විශාල පිළිතුරු ප්‍රමාණයක් අපි ඉදිරියේ තිබෙනවා අවාසනාවකට වගේ ඒ පිළිතුරු පේන පිළිතුරු ටික ගන්නවත් අපිට ඒ හැකියාව මේ අවස්ථාවේ නැත්තේ ව්‍යවසායකත්වයක් ඇති රාජ්‍යයක් අපිට නොමැති වීම නිසා. අපි යවුවා මේ පොලිසි රේට් එක 15 වෙතිෙද්දී ඇයි කොහොමද ලෙන්ඩින් රේට් එක 30 වෙන්නේ? නමුත් එහෙම වෙලා තියෙනවා. රජය තීරණය කරලා තියෙනවා ආර්ථිකය සංකෝචනය කරන්න. නමුත් අර මිලියනකට ආසන්න මිනිස්සු පිරිසක් දැන් ගෙදරවල් වල ඉන්නවා ඉදිකිරීම ශාස්ත්‍රයේ හිටපො. දැන් ඒ පිළිබඳ සමාජ සංවාදයක් නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ තාමත් කතා කරන්නේ අර පරණ කතන්දර වගේක්. අනාගත බලාපොරොත්තු තියෙන යම් කිසි දේශපාලනඥයෙක් හෝ දේශපාලන ව්‍යාපාරයක් තියෙනවා නම් පළවෙනි දේ තමයි විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ රටේ විශාල කාර්යභාරයක් ආර්ථිකයට කරන ව්‍යවසායකින් රැක ගැනීම සඳහා කටයුතු කිරීම. නමුත් මම අවංකවම දකින්න හැම දෙයක් වෙනවා කියලා.
Now, at the Colombo Stock Exchange, stocks closed in red and hit a 2-month low today amid concerns regarding domestic debt restructuring and margin calls triggering selling interest during the morning session. However, towards the latter part of the session, market rebounded slightly and partially offset losses made during the first half. Despite the poor participation from local investors, foreigners continued to show confidence in the market and recorded net foreign inflows for the 6th consecutive day. Meanwhile, turnover was recorded at 928.8 million rupees, 19.7% lower than the monthly average of 1.2 billion rupees, aided by capital goods sector and the banking sector. Here's a look at the day's currency rates now. And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. I'm Indiveri Amuatho. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.